Welcome everyone to the LA chapter of StartOut's webinar event hosting Pride Fund 1 and Pitch Genius. I am excited to have you all join us this afternoon. My name is Craig Lynn and I am one of the programming board members of the LA chapter of StartOut. Helping me today on the webinar is Alex Brightman, who's can't see him right now, but he will be monitoring and moderating the Q&A portion. Oh, there he is. Hi, Alex. For those of you who are new to StartOut, StartOut is a nonprofit organization founded in 2009 that focuses on empowering LGBTQ plus entrepreneurs. StartOut's mission is to increase the number, diversity, and impact of LGBTQ plus entrepreneurs and amplify their stories to drive economic empowerment of the community. In essence, StartOut is all about networking, entrepreneurship, and community. If you are a founder, StartOut provides direct individual support through mentorship, office hours, investor connections, and an accelerator program called StartOut Growth Labs, which coincidentally has an application deadline of this Saturday if you're interested. StartOut is also active in 11 different cities, obviously in LA where I'm at, as you can see, also in Atlanta, Austin, Boston, Chicago, Denver, San Francisco, Seattle, Washington, DC, and even Sydney, Australia. In the future, StartOut is planning to expand into 4 additional cities: Detroit, Oklahoma City, Nashville, Tennessee, and Research Triangle, North Carolina. So consider joining StartOut after the event by visiting startout.org. Today's event is actually broken up into 2 parts. The first part, or the main entree, if you will, as it is almost dinner time here on the West Coast, is a panel discussion with Densil Porteous of Pride Fund 1 and Jasmine Foroutan of Pitch Genius. Then part 2, the dessert, a fun, informal networking event using a platform called Icebreaker, where it's kind of like speed dating, but it's really networking. So be sure to stick around for the main course, and then obviously the dessert, because who doesn't like dessert? And now, to kick off the main part for tonight's main event and to introduce the 2 panelists, we have Densil Porteous, who is the CEO of Pride Fund 1 and founder and chief strategist of Porteous Consulting. With a keen interest in tech and startups, Porteous has advised and worked with partners such as VarsityBooks.com, the Varsity Group, Zinch, Vario Labs, Ulingo, Accept, Raise Me, Rev1, Jungle, Ticketfire, Get Accepted, and a whole bunch of other places. Densil, who identifies as gay, has served in executive leadership roles on several local, regional, and national boards while having a notable career in education administration. And finally, Densil is also the father of a super duper cute 3.5-year-old daughter. Meanwhile, Jasmine Foroutan is a pitch deck expert for early stage startup seeking capital. As the founder and CEO of Pitch Genius, her boutique consulting firm is hyper-focused on building compelling storylines and pitch decks that speak to investors. For the past 3 years, Pitch Genius has advised startups on investor communications and fundraising worldwide, and about 42% of their fundraising clients have successfully raised. Everyone, please give it up to Jasmine and Densil. Jasmine, take it away. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that great introduction. Okay, cool. So, okay, perfect. So first of all, I want to say thank you for having me. I'm so excited to have this conversation with Densil. We got to get to know each other earlier this week a little more, and I was truly flabbergasted and kind of mind blown by his attitude towards venture capital and his entire mission and value system around it, and it truly does break the mold. So I look forward to not only getting into his story, but also talking about Pride Fund 1, giving more information about how they can apply and effectively apply. So we'll have some pitch conversation and pitch tips towards the end of this. But Densil, why don't you start out by telling us about Pride Fund 1? How did the fund start? How did it come to be? How much money did you raise?
Yeah. So, well, also thank you, Craig, and thank you, Jasmine, for this opportunity. I'm actually blown away by Craig's energy and that introduction, right? Like, how do you live up to what he just said? I guess we just live into it. We just live into it. But Pride Fund One is a beautiful relationship of a number of minds that came together over a year ago. I'm here in Columbus, Ohio, and I think that's I think a real great reflection of how we work, how we always come together for the benefit of the community and for the good. Our good friends at Atlas Partners, brought folks together for Venture Out last year, which was a way to bring a community from across the country to Columbus, Ohio, to see and understand what was happening in the LGBT ecosystem of business. And it was great. It was a wonderful beginning to something that was beautiful. After Atlas Partners had that first event, they got together with Loud Capital, who I sometimes call our big brother, who really was the impetus of where it all came together. So Loud Capital and Atlas Partners came together and created Pride Fund One, which reflects a desire to uplift and empower the LGBTQ community through venture. Loud Capital believes in venture for people, and this is exactly what that's all about. So for the last year, we incubated here in Columbus. We got together some of the brightest and best minds of people who really wanted to see this be successful, and aimed for a $10 million fund. And we did a sort of a quiet launch in early January of this year, and then did a real nice and bigger launch in June to tie it together with Pride Month, with the announcement of me as CEO, Michael Smithson as our board chair, and then just where we were with the fund. We also introduced our Pride 5, which I know we'll talk about a little bit later, some of them. So that's the impetus, and that's where we are today. And that's why I'm glad to be here with you.
Amazing. Amazing. Yeah. And so also, what is the outcome for this first $10 million, right? Like, this is Pride Fund One. There will hopefully be other funds to come. So what are the outcomes that you're looking for this first fund, and how you see it evolving into the future?
Yeah, I think that it's wonderful because our managing director, Timothy Wolfstar, goes by Wolf. He likes to say, yes, it is. This is just one. That means there should be many, many more, whether here in Columbus or whether they're based somewhere else across the country. The hope ultimately here is to really show the world that there is value added when you uplift and invest in diverse founders and entrepreneurs. We all understand as a business community or as an ecosystem that when you have differences sitting at a table, it empowers the way work happens, and it moves things forward in beautiful ways, because you don't move forward with just the same mindset thing. You create challenges in conversation and dialogue that produce beautiful new outcomes. And so ultimately in this moment for us, that's ultimately what we're looking for, is to break the mold of how the community thinks about venture and how we invest.
What a beautiful segue into this beautiful next slide. So breaking the mold, right? Breaking the VC mold. This is like, we've already mentioned, okay, you focus on early stage startups, either at early stage or at growth stage. Okay. So those are slightly different things. They might be, have some traction. They could be in full growth. Revenue is clearly a really important piece of the startups that you're looking to invest in. So everybody watching should know that. But let's talk about the impact and the legacy aspect of it. What is the impact that Pride Fund One is going to create, and what legacy are you going to create for the LGBTQ plus community?
Yeah. So, I think it's the intersectional identities. I've got to start there, right? Like, because even as I try to separate impact and legacy, they're going to be connected together. And intersectionality is part of what we're talking about in this space. It's how I'm sitting in this particular space. I'm a Black man, but I'm also a gay Black man. So that intersectional identity means something. And I think when we talk about impact in investing, it's not necessarily impact to a segment or sector of society the way that we might think. Like, if you're investing in tech, then you might impact it that way. Or for us, it's about impacting actually the LGBT community, and the way that the world envisions and sees members of that community, and how they engage just every day, right? The ability to bring your full self to work is a beautiful thing. And so we're impacting someone's ability to just be their full selves in whatever space they exist in. And that's really the impact is to the LGBT community, and how people engage and see us in whatever fashion. I think the legacy component is part of that, right? Like the legacy is that we have an opportunity to change how the world communicates and talks about the LGBTQ community. I think we can be equal and contributing citizens of society who impact business and have really strong capital investments that do great things. We don't have to just be artists. We don't have to just be actors and performers, right? I think there are other ways that the legacy of who we are as a community and as a segment of society can be reflected differently. And so I think when we even add those together, you see how we can impact the venture space in and of itself. If we are thinking about how founders and entrepreneurs are bringing their full selves to whatever it is that they're creating or talking about or presenting, it really, I think it really empowers people in a different way.
Yeah, and I have to commend you because you are showing up as your authentic self in this position as a VC, and that's exactly what you're talking about, right? Like being a leader, creating legacy for yourself and for your people. And like you are, I mean, there are plenty of people within the community doing this, of course, but to see it within the venture space and to see you as the face of it, owning it, and not just owning it, but again, you're speaking about these virtues and these values, but you're also living them as you're talking about them. It's amazing.
Yeah, no, and I think you have to. I mean, I think I say to people, I always start from a place of yes, and then I work my way out of it. And so it's intentionality, right? When Wolf came to me and said, we want you to be CEO of this fund, I had to sort of be intentional about saying yes. You don't often see Black and brown faces leading funds. You just don't. And so I said, okay, well, that's one reason I'm going to say yes. But the other reason was that you don't often always also see Black and brown leaders in the LGBTQ community stepping out and getting equal and deserved recognition. And so for those two things, again, intersectional identity coupled together, said, yes, Densil, you have to lean into this moment. It will be a lot of work. You can't let it fail because people are going to be watching. And because of that systemic racism, people are going to be expecting you to work twice as hard so that you can succeed and break every limit. Now I'm just a hard worker, period. So that's just who I am. But I know that people are watching even more intently in this moment to ensure that, oh, look, see, he couldn't do it. Well, trust me, I can, and I am. And
you will.
And I will, right? And hopefully everyone actually leans into that because empowering the entire community is actually what this is all about, ensuring that we're all successful in the end.
Absolutely. So I want to ask, what is your, we know your personal connection to the fund, your value, your connected values. What ultimately made you say yes, other than like, okay, I need to live my truth and push this legacy forward? What support did you know you were going to have going into this, and what made you say yes, like absolutely yes?
Because I believe in it. I mean, that was like it was. I mean, that's really it. Like when you believe in something, you say yes.
What is tell us more about your background and like your personal background into what made you feel like I can do this. Like, not only do I have the experience, but like I'll figure it out regardless if I don't know how to do something, but I know I can do this.
Yeah, I am a lifelong learner, and that's language that I received when I was attending undergraduate school at Kenyon College, and liberal arts educated folks probably now all hear about being a lifelong learner and how important it is. I think they start to bring that down to some high schools, if you're lucky, private schools and other schools, they talk about lifelong learning, and I think that's who I am, and that's what inspires me to say yes often. As you just said, right? Because to me, it's like, if I don't know it, I'll figure it out. If I don't know it, I'm going to work hard to figure it out. If I don't know it, I'm going to ask someone for help. I think these are all values that are important, right? Because again, together, I think we can all be successful. I fully believe in learn some, share some. So if I learn something, then I'm going to share that with others, and hopefully others see me doing that, so they will do the same for me. Right? Like, what is the point of keeping knowledge to myself? it doesn't help me anyway, because then I'm going to be the only one who knows it. And so I can't really talk about it with someone else. So I think being able to empower other people and sharing that is something I've always learned as I've gone through my background. Even I guess even further back than that, right? Like the example that I grew up with, my mother, who passed away when I was 14. She came to America from Jamaica with several kids, 4 kids at a very young age. And she didn't have a high school diploma. And I watched her in New York, get on a bus and a train, sometimes with me as a young child, to go and finish her GED. And so hard work, what I'm doing now is nothing, right? Like that to me was hard work, where someone who was under the age of 30 with 4 kids came to America to give us a better life, to better ourselves, was doing what she did again at that age on her own. And I think that's inspiring to me, but that also motivates me to do more, right? Like this is easy work in comparison to that in my mind. Even raising a child is harder work than this work. And I'm so privileged now to raise a 3.5-year-old wonderful daughter. And I think to myself, also, what is a legacy that I'm going to leave in this world for her? If she can see that her dad out, did this for other people, then that hopefully she's inspired to believe that there are other people who are going to be doing the same things for her, and that she can do that for other people. So, it's, I don't know. It's who I am. It's how I've always been been raised and inspired by my mom. And I think everything has been built upon since then. I've had a number of really powerful women who have represented mother figures in my life since then, from a very diverse spectrum of places and races and backgrounds. And I think, if nothing more, this also reflects the beauty of who they are, right? To say that, yes, our child would lean into uplifting everyone in this opportunity that he could.
Oh my God, so beautiful. Like I'm crying. People on the other side are crying too. That's amazing. That's really amazing. I mean, we all have our stories. Yours is so personally connected to this. And it just, again, first of all, thank you for sharing, right? I think so often entrepreneurs, founders, whoever's joining this audience, they see VCs and there's like anxiety around pitching a VC, anxiety around like, how do I approach them? How do I impress them? But you have opened us into your world, and you've allowed us to see who you are and what your values are. And I hope that connection that you've made with us and with everyone allows people to see like, hey, yeah, there is a VC mold, but we're in a new age. You're breaking it. We're changing the face of it, and
You should be. I mean, ultimately, this is about as simple as it seems, though, right? Like, you're uplifting someone's humanity when you invest in them. You believe in what they're presenting, and that you're literally uplifting them. And so, how do you not see that as part of something that's human more so than just monetary? Yes, there's money and there's returns. That's important, but there's a human and an identity behind that we should also be leaning into just as much. And trust me, every VC puts, you put your pants on one leg at a time, or however you do it. Some people do put them on at the same time. Shimmy, go you. But we're human. Like, we're literally all the same. And so I think that break down whatever ego you have and just realize it. When you invest in someone, you're inspiring them, not just only monetarily, but just also as a human. And that's beautiful.
And that's why we're going straight into the next slide. That's why it's venture for the people, right? Yeah. Venture for people. You kind of like glazed over that in the beginning, but I want to make it clear to everyone, and also like, it speaks volumes for Loud Capital that they are your big brother, big sister. They're there giving you resources, supporting you. The entire Loud Capital network is there. At the end of the day, this is your baby, and this is what you are going to accomplish this entire thing with their support. But I want to dig more into venture for people and just close out, what does that ultimately mean for this Pride Fund, and what do you want founders to understand when you say venture for people?
Yeah. So, it's, I'm not going to say it as eloquently or you know, as well as Loud Capital founder Naveen. And I mean, I think Naveen is an inspiration to me because, of course, he's the one that said yes. Let's uplift Densil in this moment. You know, but I think when we're thinking of venture for people, and what we've gotten from the inspiration from Loud Capital is that we are ultimately, again, helping to uplift a community of people, everyone. And so whether it's the individual investor who's putting money into the fund, and in that moment for them, it's saying, oh, wow, look, I can do this. This is something I didn't realize I think I could do before. And that's because we have a lot of smaller LPs that are coming into that. And it's something they've never done, and they want to they're inspired by what they're doing. You know, they're inspired to say, this is something I believe in because you're uplifting a community, so they will invest. And then I think on the other side, as I've already highlighted, you know, it is about ultimately uplifting those who we are investing in, that they understand that we are giving them this economic investment, but we also put time and energy into them, right? So it's also saying, do you need and I keep using the term uplifting because that's part of our ethos, right? It is about how else can we support you in this moment, in this process? It's not just here are the dollars, let's see the returns, but it's also these are the things that we think we can leverage from our team to share with you so that you can be better. So yes, again, it is about the return, but it's also about the uplift and the legacy. And so that's why it's about venture for people, right? Like it is that we are going to give you just as much in terms of people, our energy, in terms of our dollars and our resources.
I love that. Okay, I know I keep just digging in deeper and deeper, but I want to make sure everyone understands the meaning behind this Pride Fund. You also described, and we talked about earlier this week, that you know you want to build companies that affect positive change in our communities. And I said, now, is that environmental change? Is it just social change? Like what kind of positive change are you talking about? And you said, hey, it's really kind of like any positive change that makes positive impact on economy, humans, environment, doesn't matter, as so long as it's positive. And I love that. And I want to talk about some of, I'm going to skip over this because I feel like we got it. We got it all. And I want to talk about some of the founders that you have invested in already. You talked about your Pride 5. I took top 3, you know, taking everyone's time into consideration. And there was no reason I chose these top 3, but regardless, I want you to tell me about this individual, her story. What was her story? Why did you choose it to invest in her? Why is she so incredible?
Wow, that's a hard one because there's so much power behind.
I should have included their names. I'm sorry, but yeah, tell us.
Behind Tanisha, I mean, like, wow. Former military. How many companies has she led and just made even more amazing? Look at me, I'm touching my face, I'm getting excited. Powerful human being, but I think if nothing more, it's the way that when she jumps into a space, she fully believes and gives of herself. And I think wonders. It's a wonder. Everything that she touches turns to gold. It's because she's just a brilliant, beautiful human who has served our country well, has served the Columbus community in such amazing ways. Yeah, she's just, I mean, like looking at her, you smile just because she's smiling. And yeah.
When you invested in her, and you know, how long has it been since that investment, and how's, like, what is your relationship look like with her on a day-to-day?
Well, I will say that we don't have a day-to-day relationship, and that's partly just because I'm a little busy. I'm a little busy with a couple of other things that we're also engaging in. What we will likely do is mostly it's our managing director who will have more day-to-day engagement with our investments. I am usually just sort of watching from afar. Aware. Oh, I'm a lurker. Did we talk? I'm a lurker. I think because I was talking about college applications. And I'm a lurker. And so I will do all this research behind the scenes. And then oftentimes people are like, Densil, I didn't realize that you even knew that about me. And so, yeah, that is how we that's how we work, is mostly the managing director does it. What we will do is, and you were saying in terms of since investing, what
has it been like working with her, coaching her, like what has growth looked like?
I would say that's not a thing that we don't necessarily coach people.
Okay.
She teaches us just as much as we engage.
Okay.
She has led, several companies before. And so the talent that she brings to us is also what's uplifting. There's an equal benefit there in that relationship.
I love that.
Not all of the entrepreneurs have that same thing where they've led numerous companies before, but in our space, in our ecosystem, in our family, she is vested. And I guess I could talk about, like, before this, she was leading Brewdog on the US side of that brewery.
Sure. Well, I think what's most important is that you're just describing that, hey, you invested in an entrepreneur and you allowed her to do her thing, right? Like, she has so much experience. There was nothing for you to meddle with. It was more just like, I'm here, call me when you need me, but otherwise you have my full support.
Yes. That's
awesome. All right, let's go on to our next one of Fab 5 or Top 5. This is a super interesting startup that created Google Glasses software. So a doctor, while he is in surgery, can have all the vitals of the patient, get information about how to treat the patient. I love technology like this. I feel like hospitals need way more tech. Tell us about this individual and what was her story and why did you decide to invest in her?
Dr. Tran is also just another amazing human who came to the States and has done wonderful things. And I first met Dr. Tran when we were doing our Venture Out event this year, so earlier in June. So this is a really, really recent investment. We were doing a program earlier in June, and Dr. Tran came to Tran is not, well, anyway, Dr. Tran came to the program, and I was actually probably more enthralled with her as she stood in the corner than anything. Again, another amazing energy that when we were around, had wonderful things to talk about in relation to the product that she was telling us about. But also just, again, her story was inspiring in terms of the hard work that she had to put into and bringing together a group of doctors and working to produce this technology, not for any economic benefit, but for the opportunity to say, wow, we can save lives and help people learn how to do these things from across the country and minimize actually the cost of travel or increase the expediencies of results. So that was exciting when I got to hear that story and just her story and her background.
Awesome. And what stage is that company at this point? Like, is it fully built? There's testing there?
Testing.
Awesome. Lots of testing, I'm sure. I can only imagine how much.
Prototype. So they're but they're testing. Yeah.
Awesome. And how far do you think they are from actually launching and making like their first sale at a hospital?
I believe they're in discussions with some early things.
Awesome.
I think that's what I can say. I'm pretty sure they're in discussions.
Totally. But not in revenue, pre-revenue, just prototype and, maybe some pilot partners in the pipeline. So that was the stage that you invested at there. And then just to kind of backtrack for Wonder, it seems like they had product fully built and they were distributing by the time you invested.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Okay, cool. And now we have Equality Vines, which I love wine. I drink wine all the time. But I love this particular startup because we're going to hear his story, and I'm sure he has a fantastic story, but also each bottle that they have has their own story on the label. So tell me, let's hear about this individual. Why did you invest in him? What is Equality Vines?
So this is our portfolio partner. So we're still working in that process of engagement. And I think what we love about this, Michael Smithson, sorry, I saw someone in the text box say something. What we love about this particular partner, and hopefully, I think most people will know. I can't even see. Is that his photo? It is. It's Jim. So most people know Jim Obergefell was the name plaintiff in our landmark marriage equality decision several years ago. And so that's exciting for us to be able to partner to uplift what he is doing and the story of Equality Vines. And yes, as you mentioned, right now, each of the bottles represents an important moment in LGBTQ history and kind of reveals that story a little bit more, or introduces that story to people for the first time. And I think that's a wonderful opportunity to be able to, again, uplift the LGBTQ community and our story and celebrate the victories that we've had. So yeah, it's Jim Obergefell. He's Jim. He's amazing. I mean, I don't know. Like, I think it's sort of like but he got us married. So it's.
Oh my God.
I mean, he and many others, but when he's the named plaintiff, so it's like, oh yeah, that was you. Thanks.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And again, all three of these people venture for people, right? And these three amazing, beautiful individuals, but also for positive change. And we can see in all three what that positive change is that they're making within the world. So.
And I think something it's also about these leaders. Like they are they're just amazing individuals who, outside of business, are beautiful humans. And their humanity comes through in the work that they do. And I think that's, again, exciting to me. And again, why we are doing what we're doing, so that they can bring their full selves to the table all the time, which is beautiful. So.
Yes, that's the best way to do business. That's my favorite way to do business. Okay, awesome. So we're going to start a poll because we want to know what stage you guys are at and what's going on in the crowd. So it should just have popped up onto your screen. And I don't know when it'll stop, but I'm going to let Craig lead the way, or Alex.
Give folks another few seconds, almost have everyone answered.
Okay, cool. So as you're answering the poll and we're figuring out, what stage your startup is in and where you are with fundraising, we're going to get into how to apply for Pride Fund 1, but also in general, like tips and tricks for applying to other funds in general, or just how to communicate to investors. A lot of their applications do look somewhat similar to what we see at the Pride Fund 1, but how do we communicate to Densil, and how do we communicate to other funds or any investor that we're approaching that we're a good investment opportunity? So let's see here. So we have 36% in idea stage, okay, 29% that are in development. So they're developing the product or the service or platform right now. 22% that have launched their minimal viable product, also known as an MVP. And we have 13% that are in revenue, awesome. And 64% are pre-raise, and then 36% are fundraising now. That's awesome. So I think it's safe to say, especially during times of COVID, that, if you are pre-revenue, it's going to be harder for you to raise money right now. But Densil, how do you feel about that in general? Like, what is your take for Pride Fund 1? And like, do you feel like you're only gravitating towards people that are in revenue right now?
That's a tricky one. I mean, I think it depends on what industry you're in, right? So there are industries that are actually booming right now during this time, and so yeah, I think that's a little bit of a difficult one. What we're looking at is not immediate return. We also are looking at long-term strategy. So yeah, it'll be a little bit of that's a hard one. It's a little bit of
yeah, no, I love it. What I'm hearing is like, hey, if you're pre-revenue or in revenue, apply because you're open.
It's about the idea and whether or not there will be return.
Sure.
It's not in this moment. But again, that's what we're thinking. Again, some other VCs might be thinking they need to see the return in revenue happening right now, and they don't have time to waste. So I think that is a place that some others may be in.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, I mean, I have heard about a different VC conversation today where it was like, your sales are low. We know it's COVID, but your sales are too low right now. We need to come back to us when you're at 1 million plus. And it's like, all right, well, the time will tell, right? Anyways, okay. And then we have idea stage, people who are in development, people who have an MVP that they've launched. Great. So there's really everyone. We have everyone, and I love it. So let's dig into the application, which you can find online. And I kind of just took a snippet of the application because this is where you're giving like the brunt of the information. First, we're asking, or they're asking for a 5-word company description, right? And so this is what I call a tagline, but it's not just your tagline, like your sales tagline. This is your investor tagline, right? So 5-word description of exactly what the company does. I feel like I always need to express this when teaching a webinar or talking about pitch decks or pitching investors. It's like, entrepreneurs are so used to having their sales hat on that they have a hard time putting their investor sales hat on and making that difference between you are not selling them so they can go buy your CBD drink. You are selling them on your investment opportunity. And those are two completely different types of sales. So yeah, I'm going to let you just interrupt me and interject thoughts.
Yeah, I will. But that summary is good. So
okay. So we're on the same page. Yes. Awesome. Okay. And now the next thing on the application, it says company solution description, 140 characters max. So this year, we're really talking about your elevator pitch, right? So we got the tagline, we got those 5 words that describe exactly what your company does. Now give us 2 to 3 sentences, maybe 2 sentences on exactly what your company does. Again, an elevator pitch rounds out what you do, who the service or product is for. It also, for me, I like to throw in a bit of traction, right? Like what stage we are in and any kind of traction that you have. But again, it's those 2 sentences that are going to make them understand fully where you're at, what your company does, and what you're trying to accomplish. Densil, anything else to add?
You're looking at the first one, and I think you've already said it. Like the first thing is, this is what we do. Mm-hmm. Really quickly, this is what we do. Mm-hmm. And the second thing is, this is what we're solving. Like this is it, right? Like, so you're bringing the journey of oh wow, that's what you do. No, but what's the next thing you're solving? Yeah.
Totally. Awesome. And so you can see here, like you can, for company stage, the drop-down menu is in the wrong place. It doesn't matter. For the current company stage, you can have concept, no concept, MVP or no MVP, be pre-launch or a launch. So really Densil is interested in looking at it all. And then the next thing you are going to submit and upload is a pitch deck link. How do you create a link for your pitch deck? Just all types of ways. You can do it through PowerPoint, you can do it through Keynote, you can do it through DocSend. But the pitch deck is a really key part of everything. I mean, our firm, that's literally what we've been doing for the past 5 years, is specializing in creating pitch decks that funds will look at, that Densil will look at and take seriously, that will raise money, open doors, and create conversation. Tell me, what is your ideal pitch deck, Densil? What do you like to see?
I remember when we talked earlier, you're like, is there a length or a number, I think, and I was like,
yeah.
I just feel like if you the more you have to show, then it's probably too much, right? Like, I don't know if whatever rule of thumb that is. I was a former admissions officer, and we used to have students cram their entire life in 500 words or less, and ask what that thing was, and I felt horrible about that. But I realized actually you can cram a lot of stuff in a little bit of space when you cut out the fluff. Right? Like you don't need 5 pictures to demonstrate the same thing. You don't need 1 word on each slide to make impact happen. no one has that much time, right? Like I think you do want to take someone on a story and a journey, but cut out the fluff and put in the impact and the powerful punches, right? Like so I think that you can tell a story with one image, right? We do say an image is worth 1,000 words. So if there is one really like compounding image that really represents something that you've put like then use that, but you probably don't need a lot of words, because hopefully someone can get what that's about. But yeah, I think it's a short, concise journey that reflects a story and highlights the impact of whatever it is that they're trying to get us to do really quickly. But again, like I said, I wouldn't say there's a number, because sometimes it might be that the 40 slide deck really actually is 40 slides because everyone is just like that quick, right? Like you might just slide through each one. I'm like, oh wow, that took me 5 minutes and I got through it. Or you just gave me 40 slides and that took me 40 minutes and I'm never going to do that again. So I think really it's a concise, clear presentation of your story without the fluff.
I love this definition, and this is amazing because there are plenty of people who have been, read countless amounts of pitch decks for a very long time, and plenty of VCs that have a very strict mold that they want to see things in. And at Pitch Genius, we're constantly like, nope, I'm going to break out of that mold. I know you asked for just 12 slides, but I promise you these 15 slides are going to be like super concise, easy to the point, and tell a good story. I also agree, like having that strict number as far as how many slides it should be, it just doesn't make sense. I mean, if you have a long pitch to give, right, you're going to have more slides. If you have, if you're just sending a teaser deck to someone, then yeah, maybe you are just doing 10 to 12 slides. But if you're sitting down or Zooming with an investor and you have 30 minutes, or maybe he's given you a full hour of his time, like you're not going to just want those 12 slides. So it's very situational. It's also, it doesn't matter. Yes, you can have too many slides, but so long as they're quick, concise, tell a good story, and like you're making the investor want to click through it, then great. But if you've put every single ounce of your business plan within the pitch deck, and you're asking them to read closely to every single page and kind of decrypt and decipher what you meant to say, it's not going to happen.
I mean, there's a little bit of, to me anyway, there's a little bit of intrigue in not knowing everything. And I'm not saying like, don't tell us everything, like, but give us, again, the highlights, the important concrete things. But if I'm reading someone's pitch deck and then the thought to me comes and it's like, oh, I wonder how they're, this is me being silly, right? Like, oh, this is going to be a widget and you want the color, the variety of colors of what the widget is going to be. I may not want to know the colors in the pitch deck because I may want to ask you that question. I mean, and that seems like a really silly little thing, but that's what I'm saying. Like, you don't have to go down sometimes to that unless you only got 3 widgets and the widgets are like these 3 colors and that's the part, like, then you got to tell us what the colors are, right? Like if your widget maker is RGB, then we need to know red, green, blue, or like that. But if you're making 20 widgets, I don't need to know what all the colors are, again, unless it's relative to, but I might think it, and that's when I can engage in a conversation with you. But if you told me everything, then I'm also not going to want to keep reading.
Totally.
But that's just, again, right? Like I think you as you said, you want to compel someone to dig a little bit more, not a lot more, because if you don't give me enough, then I'm just going to get tired and throw it away. But you want to inspire the intrigue. I mean, it's about telling a story. It's hard to think about it like that. But you are telling a story that keeps me interested in wanting to clicking through or sliding through.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think a big part of that, and that's the next part of this, is how do you intrigue someone, right? You have a good hook. How do you tell a good story? How do you have a good pitch? You have a good hook. And we talked about this earlier in the week, but it's that story, it's those opening slides that really hook you and drag you in to be like, okay, now I'm ready to read this from beginning to end. We're going to get into what does storytelling mean, but what do you see, because you're seeing decks all the time now and you're seeing submissions all the time now. What are the best hooks? What do you see in the best hooks?
when you get a shimmer of the founder's story, like a shimmer. I mean, I'm not saying everything, but just a shimmer, because you possibly can't. But again, we are a different kind of VC, so that's why I find like I have to frame that all the time. But everyone should be thinking this way, right? Like when you understand a little bit in this space of that person's story, then you can understand possibly the challenges that they've already faced that may make them a stronger leader, or ensure that they were going to work that much harder to ensure that whatever they're doing is a success. So it's a shimmer. I mean, I think and sometimes it comes in this little place here, right? Like sometimes they give something of that additional information that's like, oh, and by the way, I too am a whatever, and these are some of the hardships, So I think that sometimes is helpful. I don't know how. I can't quite tell people how to do it because everyone's story to how they got to where they are is a little bit different. But when you have sort of what I call a cover page like this, you have an opportunity to add that shimmer. To, again, go back to college admissions, right? There used to be the question on the Common App where every college essay was, is there any additional information you'd like to tell about yourself? And I think that's sort of the space that I see that this could be, right? Is that additional information that we haven't asked directly about, that you probably didn't even think is relevant in that moment. That is sometimes helpful to help show that little bit of shimmer or spark about who the entrepreneur is behind it. So yeah,
yeah,
it's an individual moment. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's like, again, bring it back to venture for people and people talking to people. When you share your story and you connect with Densil, whoever is on the other side reading that deck, and you share that bit of extra information, now you've made connection, and now you've increased remembrance. Like how much you will be remembered, or like, what is that hook? What is that thing that's going to say, oh, I remember reading this deck, or, oh, I'm really interested in meeting this person. I have to hear their story, or I have to figure out how they even put this amazing technology together and got to this level of traction. Or, I mean, forget technology. It's not all just about tech. How did they achieve what they've achieved so far? What is the story behind that? So when we do tell stories, people engage with the pitch, people they remember your pitch, and it actually makes it easier to regurgitate your pitch when speaking to other investors and colleagues. So that's also something to keep in mind when you're saying, okay, I have to build a story into my pitch deck. Why am I doing this again? This is a business plan. It's not just a business plan. The deck, it's a marketing tool. It's your marketing tool. Exactly. This is your marketing piece to get investors interested. And so telling the story is key. Now let's keep the parting going, right? So tell a good story, huh? I have to stop and say that I know there's so much information out in tech and in the community, in all communities. And there is this new drum of like, tell a good story. What's your story? What's your story? But I feel like founders and entrepreneurs are still lost in, okay, what does that mean though? Do you just want me to tell you about, my grandma who inspired me to cook, and then so now I have this startup, and, or does it go beyond that? For me, it goes beyond just the personal story. Of course, like saying something personal about yourself and communicating your personal connection to why you started this and why you're so invested in it is always going to be a positive, but there are many ways to hook your investors into a good story. So I want to share that, first of all, when you are at your computer and you're looking at Keynote and you're looking at PowerPoint or slides or whatever it is that you're using to build your deck, this is what it looks like, right? You have your like slides on to the left side, bottom to down, and then you have this one slide that you're working on. And it's like, people often treat each slide like this individual piece of paper, and like you're gonna just throw things onto that paper. But I challenge you to shift your perspective and see these slides as each page in a storybook, right? So Densil has a 3.5-year-old daughter. He reads stories to her all the time, I'm sure. And when you read those books, I love this analogy because it's so true. Go read a children's storybook. It's so easy to follow and understand. It's painful, right? And there's literally one idea per slide. Like, first Sally went to the park, then Sally picked an apple. The apple tasted good, and then the apple made a lot of money. So whatever the story is, but like, it's true. It's the analogy of like, treat it like it's a story. There's going to be flow. There's going to be a beginning, a middle, and an end. And you're going to have a lot easier time figuring out what to put on each slide. Densil, what?
Funny, we didn't talk about this,
Yeah.
but that is literally how I usually do it. Like because it does just, it sort of automatically makes your brain think about a story. Like, it's a storyboard, right? Like,
literally.
Artists talk about storyboarding and like building these things. So like it exactly, that's what it is. I love that little visual of like, it's shifting. I mean, you're literally shifting your way of thinking about it. And I believe once you start thinking about it being a storyboard, then you will start thinking about telling a story versus a presentation. Yeah, that was that. Yeah, I mean, which is, it's funny because what is, should I be talking about? What is that? There used to be that online one. God, who was that? I can't even think of it. It was like a presentation platform, and they decidedly broke it up from that linear structure.
Perfect.
Like, to make you present and like have these things coming from all these places. What was that? I can't even think of the name of it. It was an online, like, it was an online
platform. I can't help you. I'm sorry. But yes, no, I hear you completely. Yes, like, it's a storyboard. It's a storyboard. It's perfect. And like, I wish I had a story, like a children's storybook to show, but like, all of us can imagine and think about it. And this is something that does not come natural to a lot of people or to many founders. And I started my business simply because I was like, founders and entrepreneurs, they don't have to be good at this. Like, if this is a skill set you can build, and if you can get good at building your pitch, then great. But if you're like, I'm not that creative person, or like, I'm not a storyteller, or I need to be educated on this, then you need to get help, and you need to get the support. Don't submit a pitch deck that it just doesn't have flow or is too complicated to understand. Like, don't do it. Don't make that the first step or the first impression of your startup. It's really important to invest time and energy into your deck. And if you're like, I'm not a good designer, pay for design. It's a marketing tool. It needs to look good. And like, okay, so let's also talk about that, because for us, like, content is the most important, right? Design, we make everything look good as well, but design comes secondary. But design is still really important, right? Like, at the very least, if a founder decides like they don't want to work with us, I'm like, that's totally fine, but please just go make sure you get this deck designed. What are your feelings about that when you get a design that is a deck that is designed versus one that was clearly kind of just put together by someone?
I'm critical, but that's just I'm gonna critique it. But it also, it's a first impression, and we all make first impressions, right? And so again, just like a college admissions officer, if you typed it out or used a pen or pencil, like, it's a different presentation. If you submitted using our application or your own application, it's a different presentation. And so you just have to consider that, again, that literally is the first impression that someone's going to have. And so however you want them to see you, that's it. So even if like you have the most amazing idea, right? If it looks like chicken scratch on a piece of paper, how compelling is someone going to really want to stick with that? And then I'm going to wonder, where is their investment in energy and time in this particular thing? And how will that reflect once they are given this investment? Are they going to continue to do that same thing? Now, if it was a designed thing, then every slide should look like a note on a napkin, and that's awesome and great. And like, then I'm thinking you totally over-designed that. Or every note is a picture of a thing on a napkin, right? Then I'm like, I get it, right? Like you did basic, but you actually thought about it. So I think, yeah, it is your first impression. And so you want to kick it up a notch, as Emerald would say, right? Like, I mean, just a notch, like just to make sure that, okay, yeah, it looks like I put some time and energy into it. I had someone take a second look at it. And they gave me an honest critique, and say something like, so I think that's, yeah, most definitely.
100%. Yeah. The way I like to think about it is like, you wouldn't launch your brand and you wouldn't launch your website having it look anything less than perfect, right? So why is the pitch deck treated any differently? It just doesn't, you shouldn't.
Some people will, right?
Sure.
Some people will. And there's this notion of iterative design, which I totally understand.
Absolutely.
But even in iterative design, you have it to a place where you think it should be,
mm-hmm.
before you start redesigning or changing or enhancing, right? So you still show that you have put some thought into what it is before
100%.
you, right?
Amen.
So
yes. Yeah. Yes. Okay. Time is running. We're going to keep going. So to bring it all together, good storytelling, what we've been talking about this entire time is that it drags us in emotionally. Densil has dragged us in emotionally into his fund, into him, into his life, into the other founders that have already been invested in. Your job and the most effective type of pitch drags us in emotionally somehow, whether it's to the market opportunity, to you, the traction, your personal story. There's many ways to go about it. But that's the function of it. And so, and why does it work? Again, because we're humans talking to other humans, sharing our stories. And clearly I'm a nerd for storytelling. So here we go. And pitch decks. So let me tell you more about pitch decks and what to do and not to do. Okay, this is something else I want to make sure everybody knows and realizes before they make a submission, before they start pitching investors, or if they're already have their deck and they're pitching. There are different types of decks, okay? You have different types of, first of all, you're gonna have multiple versions of your pitch deck, okay? The two main versions you should have is a reading deck, which is also called a standalone deck. So it's a deck you can email to an investor. It completely stands alone. It pitches Densil from beginning to end without you there to verbally explain anything, right? So he should be able to fully get it. There are full sentences there. There are complete sentences there, okay? There isn't just an image with a title and then like what is it called? Encrypted subtitle. That's like, I think I understand what this slide is telling me, but I'm also assuming what it's telling me. Don't do that. You have a full reading deck. It does have more content. You're able to include a little more information without including too much. It's still supposed to be light, but again, it stands alone. You can email it out. Now, if you're ever in a situation where you're Zooming with an investor and you're finally having that one-on-one with Densil, you get to talk to him in person, or by in person, I mean Zoom. That's our new in person. You are going to have a completely separate version of that deck, and that's the presentation deck. It can have the same content, or the messaging and everything can be the same, but you are taking off most of the content from all of the slides. Okay, what I'm presenting to you right now, what I'm sharing with you, this is a presentation deck, right? And hopefully you've just been listening to me and Densil converse versus focusing on these slides too much. So you never use your reading deck to present over Zoom. What's going to happen is your investor is going to naturally, being human, is going to try to read what you've asked him to read on the slide. Okay. And Densil's going to start reading the slide, and then he's going to be like, oh wait, like you're also talking to me at the same time and I can't, and now okay, let me focus on what you're saying. And at that point, he's missed the first 5 seconds of that slide, and now he's missing information. So don't trip your investors up, don't trip Densil up. Let him focus on you and make your presentation deck very light on words and very visual. So Densil, how often do you see submissions and people making this mistake? Like, do you connect with what I'm saying, or is it like, meh?
I connect with what you're saying. But I acknowledge that I will engage either way, but you are correct, right? Like, you are struggling to keep attention and focus in both places because you're thinking, should I be reading what's on the screen or should I be listening to you? And that's of course, as you just said, any presentation, right? They try to tell you to keep a light on the screen so that they can focus on what you're saying. And actually that's usually what you want people to plug into, because well, anyway, so yeah, so I think that's ultimately it. Yeah, I fully agree with you. It's interesting. People still do both. They don't know they don't know the distinction. I can see when sometimes I've been in meetings with the team and there's that glaze over moment, and it's like, oh, it's happening because there's too much. Like they like and I watch people. I'm a studier of folks, and so you can see when this moment happens, when someone's presenting, and oftentimes they may not be seeing it because they're so caught up in what they're saying, right? They're just going and going and going because they have such a little amount of time. They want to get it all out, and they're not realizing that they may have, as you said, lost someone in the first 5 seconds of the slide, and then the person is sitting there thinking, okay, did I miss something important? Am I kept like what? So
yeah. Yes, it's almost like, remember that feeling when everybody was doing their like in-class presentations and they all started like going through their pitch deck and it was just like, and now I'm not listening anymore. These slides are awful, or I just don't care. It's like, it's almost that feeling. It makes things sleepy, which is like the complete opposite of what we're trying to accomplish. Okay, so now to review. Reading deck must stand alone, right? Think about the big text on the screen versus the little text on the screen, and definitely make sure to tell a story. Presentation deck, it's extremely visual, very minimal text, kind of how I'm showing you now. Also tells a story. In both situations, you're bringing out that awesome storytelling ability. You're engaging your audience and you're connecting with them on a human level. Now, just to wrap things up, because I know we want to get into our dessert. It's almost time for dessert. It's important to like root us again into that moment where you're sitting at your desk and you're reviewing all of these decks. I always remind founders, and this is why we talked about your fund requirements in such detail at the beginning, right? I wasn't just digging and asking and talking about, well, what does positive change mean? Because I wanted to talk about it. It's also, I wanted to share what your fund requirements are, because that is something that you're making sure every deck or every founder that you are going to approach or speak further with meets, right?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Fund requirement. Down. Yes. Plain yes. And we got it. Next thing. We've already talked about this. Make it easy on Densil to understand, on all investors. Make it super easy for them to digest. And I think we've talked about it enough as far as what that means, what that looks like. Storytelling, concise slides, write it like a children's storybook. And also, this is another thing. Densil's a very smart guy. He knows a lot of things, but don't assume that he knows anything about anything, right? We talked about that earlier this week too. Like, don't assume that he understands anything about your space, anything about your technology. I think at this point, it's safe to assume like people generally understand what AR is, right? Or VR, and like, we don't need to explain what AR and VR is. And there are certain pieces of technology or business models that we can just say. But otherwise, like, to make it really easy to understand, treat him like he knows nothing about it and you are educating him about the space. And again, you interject whenever you have anything to add. Now, we also debated about this earlier. Just like there's no slide limit for Densil, apparently there's no time limit as well. I bet that there is though. Like there is a point where you're just like, okay, I'm going to stop reading this. Do you ever have that point where you're like, I'm just not going to finish this pitch deck, or do you really give every single submission 100%?
See, that's an interesting that's interesting the way that you frame that, because I think you'll go through all of them, but at what point does 100% become like 95% in terms of it? So it's sort of like your energy may decline. You may complete it, but your energy may decline as you're completing it.
Yeah.
And that again goes with but that again goes, as you talked about, in terms of how you tell the story and you present the information, right? So if it takes 5 minutes and it's a good story, I'm not going to be upset with you. But again, it's hard to me. It's hard to put a timeline on anything, and we also all review and look at things very differently anyway. I have been trained to assess things in a particular way because of my former background, and so I can actually move through things pretty quickly. Reading 1,500 applications in a month is something I'm used to, so I can actually assess those pretty quickly. But I think it's also a little bit of what you said. You have to think about who is the one sitting behind reviewing, and if you think that they are receiving 100 opportunities a day, then you may want to say, let me trim it down. So that means if you're pitching to a top VC, then you might want to think, okay, they might only literally time themselves and give themselves 2 minutes. Like some people may set a timer and say, okay, 2 minutes. So I think you need to, as you've said, you do need to create something for whom you're submitting to, so yeah. So if you think that they don't have as much time, then no, don't send something that's going to take 20 minutes. Because it probably won't get done.
Well, again, I love your perspective. I love your, it's not that you're just bringing like a fresh pair of eyes to the VC for this community. And they are like, we are so lucky to have you leading this initiative. Like, this is amazing. And with your fresh perspective, fresh eyes, and just complete passion for pushing this legacy forward, I'm super excited to see what happens with these companies and the fund.
It's the team, right? Like I said, we are intentional about how we've come together as a group to uplift each other, and then people who have just said, yes, we believe, and so we want to lean into it. So I'm just lucky to work with the folks that I get to work with each and every day. And there are days when I don't get to see them virtually and I get a little sad because their energy and their belief in what we're doing is equal to mine, if not sometimes greater, right? And that's exciting to me. So yeah, it's while I'm sitting in this chair, that again is because of what I believe about representation mattering. But that was an intentional choice. But we have a great team of folks who are all just as passionate and value-based and believe in this the same way.
Awesome. Well, again, we look forward to you and the entire team hearing good news, hearing success, and hearing about the legacy. I know I will be following you guys and watching very intently and referring anyone and everyone your way that I can. I mean, now that we all know. So thank you to everyone who joined. I'm going to let Craig come. Yeah. Hey. There's Greg.
There are a few questions in the audience for Densil. One question is Pride Fund open to non-US companies?
So my answer right now is that we have not started that process. That would look a little bit differently than what we're doing here in the US. So at the moment, that is not a place where we're existing in.
Okay. Another question is, what gets you really interested in a company? Is it their product, viability to create meaningful impact, profitability, their personal story? Clearly they all matter, but if they're all great, what makes you smile? I think it was a story that you talked about earlier, but if you want to elaborate a little bit.
Yeah. Again, return is important. So even if all of those things are equal, hopefully then equal means they're it's like they're going to be amazing in terms of the return because they're just a really great person. So yeah, I think it's, if they're all equal, I don't know what tips one over again, but it is about the return. So as we're looking at investments, we want to make sure that they're going to be profitable, and that we believe that whether in the moment or long term, we will see profit come to it. So the person could be great and amazing, but if we don't believe in the product, then we're not gonna be able to support that. Yeah.
The other question is, what's your average check size and what is the evaluation at the time of your funding?
In terms of investors or going out?
I think
he means like average check size into the companies that you give, and what determines how much you give to that company.
Yeah, that's a good one. It is varied. It is varied. I would probably say an average would be 100,000 investment average. If we're, again, in terms of an average. And the second part was, where were they in their valuation?
Yes, I believe so.
That has been across the spectrum.
Okay. All right. The other question,
when you're looking at pre-stage and early, so it's across. I mean, it's across the spectrum. Like, so, yeah.
The other question is, what recommendations do either of you have on differentiating and getting to the point of the pitch? With most VCs and entrepreneurs, relationships and introductions play a major role, but for LGBTQ founders, that's not always an option. What are your thoughts?
For differentiating yourself?
Yes.
Densil.
I'm sorry, I don't think I got the first part of it fully.
So what recommendations do you have on differentiating and getting to the point of the pitch? With most VCs and entrepreneurs, relationships and introductions play a major role, but for LGBT founders, that's not always the option. What are your thoughts?
I think well, it's interesting because I think making relationships, anyone can, and you just have to believe in yourself to reach out and just do it. So even in those spaces where you think that it may be difficult to make a relationship, you literally simply have to, because again, you believe in what you're doing. I don't know that there is a way to differentiate yourself in the space to get the pitch, if that's what you mean. But again, it's just once again believing in yourself to say I can do it, I have to do it. And you know, I've gotten lots of LinkedIn requests from a variety of folks who I have never connected with before in my life because they've just read my email somewhere or seen my name somewhere. And I appreciate that they said, you know what, I believe in myself enough to just reach out. You know, that's how this conversation partly started, right? It was like, I know that what I'm doing is value to someone. So I'm going to just, again, reach out and do it. Then there's the assessment, right? The evaluation of whether or not we want to connect with you for a pitch. That's a different moment. Relationships matter, but I don't think they're the end all be all in terms of getting in front of someone to pitch.
Okay.
Yeah. Sorry. I wanted to answer that as well. So it's also like something that definitely will differentiate you is your undying confidence in that room and commitment to what you're doing and the fact that you are doing it. Like I always give this analogy that you are a moving train and there's no stopping you, whether this VC joins you or not. And, you know, earlier today I was hearing someone say like, oh, like someone told me not to compare myself to such big startups because I'm at such an early stage and like, and that's not a really good comparison. And I was like, well, do you believe you're going to be as big as those startups eventually? And one day, do you believe that you can capture that amount of market share? And that's the sandbox you want to be in, then just have that confidence and pitch it, because whoever told you that bit is like, it's like, yeah, maybe, but also like, just show up as your authentic self and show up and present what you want to execute and what you want to accomplish, without being afraid of offending like the VC. I think we tiptoe around that a lot, but like come in with confidence and just come in saying what you're going to do and then do it.
Yeah. It's like you can't diminish.
Yeah.
Because you already believe that you are diminished. So you literally just need to come in and shine.
Yes.
Next question is there a range for seed investments or a max that you don't go beyond? And then do you take the lead or you just follow?
We have done, I think, I shouldn't say following, but I think we've mostly followed at this point in time. We've not taken any lead investments, I believe. is there a max? We have conversations internally to discuss that. So it's a decision with the team to say where we would how much we would do.
Okay, and then the next is what key differences should be in a cold deck sent versus email versus a presented deck?
Is that specific, or is that like a Jasmine general, or?
I guess this is either one of you. Key differences in a cold deck sent via email versus one you're presenting.
Yeah. I'll take this. So I think the easiest way to explain it is that when you send that cold deck, teaser deck, that's readable, right? You can email it out to someone. The goal is to set up a meeting, right? And so the difference between what's in that teaser deck and your full-on presentation that you want to give the investor is like, it's just enough information for them to say, yes, I want to meet with you and I want to learn more. And then that full presentation deck, which is again highly visual, then you start sharing your secret sauce, or you start sharing the nuts and bolts and really shine and show them like, this is how we're going to execute this, and this is where we are, and we need money now, and this is how it's going to take us. So that's the difference. It's like you're teasing with the cold deck, and then you're giving the full pitch once you have them in person.
Okay. And the next question is, how does one access the application for Pride Fund? Is that on your website?
Yes.
Okay.
Go to pride.vc and it'll be there.
Yes.
And it's pride.vc, nothing else, just pride.vc.
Another question is, what if we have year-over-year positive growth, but we don't know what our ask is?
You got to figure out your ask, right? Sorry, I jumped in on that one.
Yeah, no, yeah, that's why I was like, what, I don't, yeah, that's, I mean, yeah.
So,
yeah.
So I feel like I've run into this with founders all the time. It's like, you don't know how much to ask for because you don't know what you're trying to execute on in the next 12 to 18 months, right? So like, you are raising money from an investor and you're asking for $100,000 to get you through the next 12 months, 18 months. But you know how much you're going to raise because you already know what you want to execute on within that time. And even though things will change, like, your ask is based off of the cost of executing that plan. Okay. So you don't know how much to raise because you don't know what your execution strategy is. You don't know what that money is for yet. So figure out what you need the money for, how much it's going to cost you to execute on it. And then you don't know how much to ask.
Jasmine, that was a really wonderful and delicate one. Until you got to that point of saying you don't know. That was beautiful. But yes, that's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
All right. A couple other questions. We know we're running a little bit on time. How important is recurring revenue model and proven revenue sources when writing your check?
It's important again, because we want to make sure that you're going to have return. We don't want to see a declining revenue model. Even in the moments of COVID, we might say, okay, yeah, we can see that you were edging up, and then in COVID, maybe it becomes stagnant or something, but it doesn't continue. Like, declining is a problem. So yeah, I think we want to see year-over-year return. That's going to be that's part of doing due diligence and understanding that this is a worthwhile investment.
And then maybe one last question. I don't know how much to ask for with funding. Should I ask for enough to survive 1 year plus one employee? How do I calculate how much to ask for?
Talk to someone. Talk to me, connect with me. There are plenty of people that do that type of consulting on their own. There are resources online to figure out how to, basically build out a financial model, build out a use of funds. So use of funds being, how are you going to use the funds and how much are things going to cost you? So
yeah, I mean,
you got to figure it out.
and it sounds like that, potentially that person may need to identify or find an accelerator that can help them answer some of the questions.
Totally.
The Pride Fund is linked to LEAP, which is an LGBTQ entrepreneurial accelerator. That was phenomenal for us to see a group of entrepreneurs and founders go through this program, and they were at all different stages of development. So some who, again, had been generating revenue year over year, others who are just putting something out for the first time, some who are just building out concepts and ideas. But it helps answer those questions, right? It does answer and look at sort of a lot of the things that we've talked about tonight, but also starts to help formulate, okay, now I get an understanding of funding model. You know, I understand what it means to build different types of decks to talk to someone. So maybe identifying and finding a LEAP, not a LEAP, but a program like LEAP, some accelerator in the community that is near you. So now a lot have moved online, you know, and I believe StartOut talked about that in the very beginning when you showed the slide of things that are going. So I think that's, you know, it sounds like that may be the space for someone I would advise is to look into an accelerator program that might help get some of those things answered. Totally.
I also need to add that the fact that you asked the question is a start already, and everyone probably already knows, but needs to know that raising money from investors and taking this type of startup journey and route is very different than building a business organically. There is some people call it the dance and pony show or whatever, but right, like there is just like there's a whole language to it. There's a whole world behind like that type of startup investment, and it doesn't come naturally to people. You don't learn about this anywhere. You really have to self-educate so you can figure out how to do it right and how to negotiate correctly and what are term sheets, and just educate yourself enough to where you can move through this process and move through this journey fully prepared. Because you won't know until you study it, or you won't know until you go through an accelerator program. It's just, it's very unique, and it's very specific to startups and raising money.
All right, I think that should be, I want to be conscious of time. I know we've gone a little bit over, but thank you so much, Densil and Jasmine. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Before we get to dessert, for those who still want to stick around, I just want to let everybody know that we have the next event for StartOut is a hackathon called Hackout. It's happening on September 10th through the 13th, and it offers LGBTQ plus startups an opportunity to meet industry experts, mentors, potential investors, and other successful founders. And for those who aren't familiar with what a hackathon is, it's essentially you join this 3-day event and you form groups, and over the course of the 3 days, you build a product, and then there'll be 3 winners, and then I think there'll be prizes of up to $5,000 for those top 3 winning teams. And applications for that are due August 22nd. And with that, I believe, Alex, did you want to throw in that link for the Icebreaker event? We'll only do maybe 5-10 minutes. The way Icebreaker works, it's on another platform. Alex is gonna shoot a link in the chat. It's basically, it's literally like a speed dating platform where you have like 5-6 minutes. You randomly pair up off on one-on-one. You get to meet random people who are also attending today. Just waiting for the link, Alex.
Looks like he sent it.
Oh, did he send it? Where?
It's a little further up because people have messaged below.
Oh, if you could send it again, Alex. Oh, there it is. I see. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. Thank you again.
Thank you. See you
Densil, Jasmine.
Bye, Densil. Thank you.
Have a good evening, everyone. It's 9:30. I'm going to go say goodnight to the baby.
All right, good night, everyone. See you on Icebreaker for those who want to join us. And, oh, Denzel already left.